Tim, you're organizing Call to Unite, a 24-hour live streaming event to help those around the world who are anxious and fearful about this coronavirus. What inspired you particularly to do this event? And what have been some of the major challenges that you faced to get it all together?
Well, I was sitting like so many people a few months ago, not knowing what was happening, and I saw the obituary of the first person to die in Louisiana in the United States. A young man named Ives Green, 58 years old. He'd lived his whole life in isolation. He's a person with intellectual disabilities. And his life was tragically cut short, but he was listed as a champion. And his family said he had a lot more living to do. And it all of a sudden struck me that both in his honor and in our own, we all have a lot more living to do, but we can't do it alone. We need each other now more than ever. So we sent out the call to people all over the world, and people have responded in extraordinary ways to this moment, to this invitation to create a global family, 24 hours of content across all kinds of different distinctions, all the different oppositions. Come to this moment, share your gift, commit yourself to service, give financially if you can, but let's unite.
You've got Julia Roberts, Oprah Winfrey. Tell me about who was the first to sign up and what other names do you have?
This is a story of ex-presidents, President Bush, and we hope other ex-presidents. It's a story of people who have been convicted, so they're often called ex-cons. It's a story of great celebrities like Oprah and great spiritual teachers like Richard Rohr or, Eckhart Tolle, and these kinds of people who are known all over the world. But it's also the story of rabbis and ministers who are managing and imams who are managing small congregations and helping to feed people. It's a story of great figures like Julia Roberts or Jen Gardner or Debbie Allen or Aloe Black or, Puffy, people like that who have great, huge reputations. But it's also a story of you and me. So it's not a show. This is important. Everybody's like, we're celebrity. I get it. It's important. We're all drawn to celebrities. But this is not a show. This is an experience. And we hope and have invited all of these big celebrities alongside their lesser well-known leaders to share from the heart, And so we leave this being invited to give, invited to share, invited to serve, but invited to be up in the process of becoming a uniter when this is over.
Tim, what do you want your global audience to take away? What's the most important message do you want to convey from this Call to Unite?
I think the most important message is that amidst all the problems in the world, division is its own problem, and we have to solve it. It's not just related to other problems. We have to become more united. Internally, we have to find more peace. In our relationships, we have to find more strength, and in our commitment to justice for all, we have to find more creativity. So this is, in a sense, a turning point. It took a long time to get as divided as we are. It's going to take some time to unite. But I hope the main message is that when you look at the human family, everyone will look and say, you know what? That's true. We are one. We have the best in us. The virus doesn't discriminate, doesn't ask what nationality you are, what gender you are, what sexual orientation you are, what religion you are. We shouldn't discriminate either in our love and our commitment to the justice and joy I think the world is starving for.
How do you feel that governments and leaders around the world are responding to the fight against coronavirus?
Well, obviously it's a big array of different responses and dictated by many different conditions on the ground. And my sense is that almost all the leaders in the world are trying to respond to something unprecedented. I don't necessarily agree with each voice, but I think the message of this call is that even if you see a voice you don't agree with, maybe give people the benefit of the doubt just for a minute, just for a moment. Try what it feels like to be curious about the other person rather than react with being furious at the other person. We're so oriented to picking at each other and to catching each other and to isolating and naming and blaming and shaming each other. Maybe right now, even to our political leaders, maybe we just let that pause for a moment. Give people the benefit of the doubt. find ways to unite, find ways to find common ground in support of the science, in support of the best available evidence that will help us save each other's lives. That's the biggest challenge, save each other's lives. But let's unite in trying to do that rather than maybe falling into the old patterns of us versus them.
What is the atmosphere like in the United States at the moment, Tim? And how do you feel President Trump is handling the crisis so far?
Well, I think, in the United States, it's not unlike other places. People are scared. People are hurting. Millions and millions of people have lost their jobs. Many of them have no safety net. They're living paycheck to paycheck already. Millions of people have been scared by the virus, and tens of thousands have lost their lives. In my own family and in my friend community, I've had to say goodbye to people by Zoom. I mean, it's heartbreaking. We're heartbroken as a country. We're scared as a country. We're worried about how and if and when we can come back. But at the same time, I think, like people all over the world, there's a deep resilience in the human spirit when we feel supported. When we know we're in it together, Americans have a great tradition of rising to the challenge. And if we can just lean back from us versus them and lean into it's all about us, this country, like many other countries around the world, can rise up with an extraordinary commitment to science, to finding new strategies to return with testing and with tracking systems. I mean, there is nothing we can't do together, and there's almost nothing we can do if we're separated and divided.
Do you feel, though, that message is coming from your president? Do you feel he is doing the right things?
Well, I think the scientists who are supporting the president and the governors, the mayors, the school officials, I think the scientists are really working hard to give all of us the best possible guidance. And I think what we have to do now is listen as much as possible. And I think most of the politicians are saying this. The president's saying this, most of the governors. Don't listen to political voices, listen to science. Listen to the best people in epidemiology and tracking and public health and disease. If we do that, if we follow that advice, I think we'll be at our best.
You said that you've been personally affected by COVID-19. What's been the hardest part for you, Tim?
Well, I'm like a lot of people. I had a terrible tragedy in my own family, and I couldn't hug my cousin who lost her daughter. I couldn't reach out to her husband. I couldn't show up. I couldn't toast. I couldn't listen. I couldn't pray together. I couldn't cry. I couldn't say goodbye. So we joined together on screens like this, and we did the best we could. It felt enormously lonely, like a real deep surrender to what is. And I hope people know that those who reached out to me, and I know this is true of all of us around the world, those who reached out to me in this moment, sent a card, a text, an email, sent a prayer, even if I didn't know it. I mean, it has meant the world. It's meant the world to know that in these moments of deep loss that affects so many of us, to trust that we're not alone. I mean, I think if there's one message here, we are so not alone. No one is alone. We just have to remind each other of that and prove it to people. Show up. We want to do this is who we want to be. We want to be those who show up for each other. Almost no one would look at this and say, "Oh, I don't want to be that person." Of course, we all want to be that person. Let's give ourselves permission to be that person for each other, and it'll change all of us. And it certainly has made a huge difference in my life.
And what do you think the best outcome could be to your live event, Call to Unite? What would you want to see happen?
I'd love to see people saying they're uniters. They vote as uniters. They buy as uniters. They live in their families as uniters. They've developed a practice to become a uniter. And I'd also like to see others pick up this challenge to take on division as the central problem of our time. I say that with a little bit of trepidation because many people will say, but wait a second, we've got hunger, we've got disease, we've got inequality, we've got all these challenges that are facing those living on the edge. And we have all those. They're serious, they're painful, they're horrific, and they're outrageous in many respects, those problems. But we can't solve them. if we don't commit to solving the problem of division. We can't solve any of these problems if we don't commit first to learning new practices to work together. I hope people leave this saying, you know, there's a point in that. Let's focus on that in addition to all the other problems, because if we don't solve the problem of division, we can't solve any of the big problems of our time.
Tim Shriver, thank you so much for joining me today from Washington, D.C., and we wish you the best of luck for the Call to Unite event.
Thank you so much. Unite.us. We welcome the world.